Morning, everyone. Today we're learning Parshas Balak, which is Numbers chapter 22, verse 2. And it's a fascinating, I find this story as a whole really interesting. The general storyline is that we have kings of Moab that are sort of on the path of the Jewish people's journey towards the promised land, who become anxious about what will happen when the Jews cross their path. And they engage this prophet or soothsayer to come and curse the Jewish people, so that they will be thwarted and they won't be able to negatively impact Moab. And so what I find most interesting about this is this person, Bilam, this prophet, and the dynamic between him being a prophet on the one hand, and on the other hand, being someone that we consider to be wicked and generally negative. He's coming to curse the Jewish people. He's being engaged by an enemy of the Jewish people. And at the same time, this is someone who is in dialogue with God, someone who has spiritual power, it seems. So to me, this is, it creates some philosophical problems. When we think about someone cursing or blessing, and that being significant, important, something to be reckoned with, we generally think, who do we go to for a blessing? We go to a tzaddik, we go to a righteous person, someone who is considered close to God. And here we have the blessings of someone who is, and again, the paradox here is that we're talking about someone who is effectively close to God, but from our perspective is not a godly man. So how do we understand that? This is a man who is willing to curse people for hire. Right? Let's not even from the Jewish-centric view that somebody who's an enemy of the Jews, how can they be called close to God? But this is a person who's willing to curse people for hire. So we don't see that as a godly person. Is it godly to curse people at all? And is it godly to do it for hire?
Some might not view him as a person at all.
Can we view him? I don't. Why would you say that he's not a person?
Not worthy of the respect I want to call.
Oh, you're saying a person in the sense that he's not a mensch?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a perfect way to define it.
All right. I would say that
that's not a positive trait.
Okay. I don't need to go that far and say that he's not a person. I think that I'd be very, very careful about talking about what it means to be a person, because again, when we make the distinction between a tzaddik and an ordinary person, right? That's different from saying that because somebody is somewhat unsavory, that they aren't in the realm of normal person. No, I think it's quite normal to be unsavory. Maybe that's a little controversial, but anyway, that's what I think. I think it's quite normal to be unsavory. And it's not like, okay, he certainly had some strange practices. In any case, I'd like to refer to a teaching by the Satmar Rebbe, Rav Yoel of Satmar, who reflects upon the words of Rav Mendel of Rimanov. He says, Rav Mendel of Rimanov asks, how is it possible that, right, so the story goes that Bilam comes to curse the Jewish people. God commands him not to curse us, instead to bless us. He keeps trying to curse us, but is unsuccessful in doing so. And he ultimately blesses the Jewish people, and his blessings become canonized in Jewish liturgy. In fact, the famous paragraph, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, how goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, which is the opening phrase of the daily morning prayer, is a quote from Bilam, who was attempting to curse the Jewish people and instead ended up blessing us. The words, how goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, were uttered despite every intention that Bilam had. He wanted to say anything negative that he could, and instead came out with these positive words, and we canonized them in our prayers. So the question that the Rimanover asks, he says, think about this kind of blessing. Bilam said it completely insincerely. He was completely insincere when he blessed the Jewish people. Every one of his blessings were said in spite of the fact that he was trying to curse us. And so what do we learn from here? When we hold up these blessings and we sanctify them and we say these are powerful and meaningful blessings, when they were in fact recited against his will and insincerely, what does that mean for us? So what are we left to reflect on? What is the meaning of an insincere blessing? So the Satmar Rebbe he says that actually it is the curses that we have to, when we learn these curses, when we learn these negative intentions of Bilam, or let's leave it at that.
I'm a descendant of the Satmar Rebbe.
Oh wow!
I just wanted to tell you that.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. When my mom was younger, way younger back in Hungary, if you didn't behave, you were threatened with, if you're not going to the Satmar Rebbe's yahrzeit this year. It was a big community to do. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, okay. So what I'm left to reflect on is that if Bilam's blessings recited insincerely had such great power, it must mean then that blessings matter, even when recited insincerely, even when given insincerely. And that's opposed to curses, right? If or I should say it's the same, right? We wouldn't say that Bilam's curses recited insincerely wouldn't matter. If that would be the case, then we would leave it alone. No, his curses would be sincere. Right? His curses, had he said them, his curses would be sincere. That would be a problem. In any case, what does it mean that we say that an insincere blessing is meaningful? And it seems to me that that what we're saying is that the truth is that the world wants goodness. And the only thing we need to do or not do is stand in the way of that goodness. And an insincere blessing is more true than no blessing at all. And it's more true than even a sincere curse. Something that I was thinking about recently is that, existence itself is a gift from God, or is a manifestation of godly creation. And thus, at the essence of our existence, at the essence of existence itself, is God's hand. The only thing that the problem with existence is that because the existence is limited, so we have some conflict that results out of the unfortunate reality that our existence is limited. And so we have to work to be simple in our existence. But nonetheless, what that leaves me with is that underlying everything, the forces of good and evil are not equal. Good is so much more powerful than evil. Because at the heart of everything is God's hand, the manifestation of divine will. So if something exists, it is loved by God. It is being brought into existence by God. And therefore, it is good. And all that's required then is for us to even to do the slightest acknowledgement of that truth opens up a window to infinity. So if you think about the teaching of the Talmud that says, if you open for me a crack, even so small as the tip of a needle, I will open for you doors as wide as the great doors of the temple. And I think that's relevant in this case, because what Bilam does is he opens up a crack, tiniest opening to admit divinity. And he opens the tiniest crack to admit divinity, and we view that with infinite goodness. So how does that work? Because remember, again, when we talk about the world being essentially good, the power of good being greater than the power of evil, it's not just that there's like more power, good is stronger. There's a qualitative difference to the nature of goodness and the nature of evil. Good reflects the divine energy that is in everything. When we are being positive, we are reflecting the divine hand and will that is at the root and the essence of everything that exists. When we're being evil, we are reflecting the limited nature, the specific nature of existence. On a simpler level, good reaches out and evil is selfish. Good acknowledges that we are all one. Selfish says, I am the only one. And so again, this means then that there is a qualitative difference between good and evil, because good is associated with infinity and evil is associated with limitation. And the same goes for anxiety, and the same goes for anger, and the same goes for all of those things. Selfishness, all of those things reflect limitation, whereas charity and love and hope, generosity, all of those things are oriented towards expansiveness and inclusion and infinity. And therefore, all we need to do is open up the tiniest crack for goodness. And what comes through that tiny crack is infinity. Because what we're opening ourselves up to is to the infinite. And that doesn't lend itself to limitation. That's always seeking to be in and of everything. And in a sense, it's a greater miracle that the world can contain evil than that the world could be perfect. So this is also true of our own deeds. Therefore, when we do something good, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not fully intentional, even if it's not fully awares, it is infinity. It is infinitely good, and it's eternally good. Whereas when we do something bad, it's necessarily only temporary. This is also at the heart of how we consider ourselves as Jews. Is my Jewishness something that I express, something that I practice, or is it something that I am? So if we talk about Jewishness as a cultural identity, then that is measured by my level of practice. But if we talk about Jewishness as a connection with God, then it is the deepest kind of identity that could possibly exist. Because I'm saying that I'm going to be manifesting, I'm going to be connecting with the very essence of what it means to be at all, what it means to exist at all. So and this means then that being Jewish, or doing a mitzvah, doing what Jews do because we believe God told us to do it, isn't a cultural practice. It's an expression of the central essence of what it means to exist at all. And again, therefore, a mitzvah is eternal and a mistake is temporary. Even a willful sin is temporary, because the willful sin only expresses the necessity of limitation. It doesn't express the driving force, the driving energy and purpose that is in existence itself. So when we are confronted with that self-doubt, saying, yeah, I'm not really on that level, I'm not really that good, do I really mean it? That's not the question. That's not a question that we should ask ourselves. We should keep going, doing good, doing as much good as we possibly can. And hopefully we will and we necessarily will be expressing a connection with the infinite. The rabbis say when it comes to something essential, when you have something true, that's essentially true, it's not possible to only have part of it. Infinity is not something which one can partially grasp. It's either there or it's not. And so if you've touched it, you have all of it. That's infinity. As soon as you open yourself up to the slightest consciousness of that essence, it necessarily includes all of it. In the words of the Jewish philosophers, Etzem, Kisha'ata tofes b'mikzato ata tofes bekulo. Essence, when you take hold of part of it, you have taken hold of all of it. And in that sense here, when it comes to a blessing, even an insincere one, because it reflects God's will, and it reflects, therefore, the essence of creation, the essence of the world, the essence of Jewish identity, it doesn't matter that it's insincere, because everything is there. And our prayers are, marked by that theme. Maybe that's a word of chizuk as we open up our prayers in the morning. The first words we say are Ma tovu olecha Yaakov, how goodly are thy tents, Jacob, Mishkanosecha Yisrael, your dwelling place is Israel. And so that's the first line of the prayers, the first words we say when we enter the synagogue. Maybe that's the encouragement that the liturgy is giving us, which is, don't worry about whether every word you say today in your prayers is going to be sincere and intentioned and connected. Don't let that hold you back. Look at the blessings of Bilam. We quote them too, and he didn't mean a word of it. So we're all certainly doing better than Bilam. Bilam was no small fry. And of course, just to reinforce the point, at the end of the reading, we find that that the Jewish people end up becoming entrapped by the Midianites, entrapped into sin. And our Haftorah indicates that this was our Haftorah alludes to the fact that this was the suggestion of Bilam, that when he couldn't curse the Jewish people with his words, all he could do was entrap the Jewish people into sin. So again, that is evidence of how insincere Bilam's blessings were, but also is evidence of how insignificant the sin was in the bigger picture, because we are still here and we have overcome that really embarrassing, tragic, shameful period in our history. We still remember it, we still read about it, but it doesn't define us. We continue to be defined by our godliness, and not by our permanent, essential, and infinite godliness, and not by our temporary expression of our limitation through sin.